A very good day to all participants and also presenters of this conference. My name is Ibrahim Fahad Suleiman. I would like to present on the role of transformational leadership style on Islamic management. Perhaps the content of this presentation goes on the introduction, the objectives, the research questions, literature review, results, and conclusion. Okay, of course, looking at the concept of Islamic management and has surfaced since the beginning of the religion of Islam, which is in Mecca and also in Medina, which the Prophet ﷺ tends to go on, introducing the Islamic leadership and its management during the administration. Perhaps this research tends to look at how to incorporate the transformational leadership style and also looking at the Islamic leadership, Islamic management perspective in this research. So in doing this, the researcher tends to have 5 questions in identifying how to incorporate this, leadership style, transformational leadership style, which comprises of the idealized influence, the inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and also looking at the individualized consideration. So we have in this research, we have 5 research questions, which goes to identify, the objectives, okay, which is to identify the impact of the idealized influence on Islamic management, to examine the inspirational motivation on Islamic management, to look at the impact of intellectual stimulation on Islamic management, and the impact of individualized concentration on Islamic management. So the last objective, which is to identify the best predictor among these transformational leadership factors that have been mentioned, to see which one has more impact on this, Islamic management. Looking at that, we have also 5 research questions, which are, of course, translated from the research objectives, which is what is the impact of Adelaide influence on Islamic management. And the second research question is what is the impact of inspirational motivation on Islamic management. And the third research question is what is the impact of intellectual stimulation on Islamic management. And the fourth one, what is the impact of individualized consideration on Islamic management. So looking at the fifth research question, we wanted to understand what is the best predictor among all these 4 suggested attribute of transformational leadership style on Islamic management. Perhaps Islamic management, we're going to look at what we tend to refer to Islamic management in the literature review as time goes on. Okay. Looking at the literature review, the Islamic management actually comprises of 2 factors, which is forgiveness, and also we have what is called sincerity. So looking at this individualized inspiration, for example, stimulation, motivation, and looking at it in terms of bringing it together to look at the concept on management in the organization for perhaps, right? So here, in the first, looking at the first, the literature, how do literature came in within this transformational leadership. Of course, in Islam also we have what is transformation, but in terms of this, we look at it in terms of the conventional, which is more on the conventional type, looking at how these the individual idealized influence could influence, for example, the forgiveness and also sincerity in any organization. It be an organization which is Islamic organization or the conventional organization, for example. So that's how we tend to look at it. And also literature, of course, looking at Islam itself, Islam talks about sincerity, Islam talks about forgiveness. On this 4 aspect of transformational leadership style. So looking at the concept of that, forgiveness in Islam, our creator, our maker, our sustainer tends to forgive us even though we have committed sin, a lot of sin. So, but in this concept of this research, we wanted to look at how do these 4, attributes of transformational leadership style tend to influence forgiveness and also sincerity. Okay, looking at sincerity, of course, someone to be have sincere to say the truth, and also, to be profound in terms of his what he says is, applicable. What he says is so sincere person in which he believes. And sincerity goes on with the belief of a person, which somebody has that doctrine within himself. Okay. And looking at the transformational leadership style, we are having all these attributes to be concluded and to be looked into in this research, so that we can understand how do all these four attributes of transformational leadership style could influence the the uh, Islamic management. So here we look at here, when we have run the test, okay, or the research, we have these variables involved. We have the idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimuli, and also we have the individualized consideration. All this in terms of the correlation, perhaps looking at the correlation, the general relationship. Of course, correlation in statistics talks about what is the relationship, right? Okay, so the relationship here is quite good, which is 0.718, which is the idealized influence on Islamic management, on forgiveness, which are the two dimensions of the Islamic management. Of course, looking at Islamic management, it has a lot of dimensions, but these two dimensions were being selected. The next one is the inspirational motivation. It has 0.77, okay, which is a very good correlation. And the intellectual stimulation, it has also 0.79, which is the highest correlation among all the correlation. And looking at the individualized consideration, which is 0.68, okay, and 87, which is also good in terms of the relationship. But looking at the Islamic management itself, that concept, which has been defined with two dimensions, it says about the forgiveness and also the sincerity. We can see that it is also, there is a correlation. There is a correlation. In terms of correlation, perhaps we have also looked at other statistical analysis to see which one has more impact on it. Okay, so in terms of correlation, this is what we have gotten. So we can see also this does the explanation which I've explained, and there's a positive correlation all along. Okay, looking at the result also, in terms of also we have that's for correlation, but in answering research question 1, research question 2, 3, and 4, perhaps looking at what is the best predictor among this, the transformational leadership factors, which is the idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimuli, and also stimulation and individualized consideration in explaining Islamic management, we have concluded, or we have conducted multiple regression analysis. So multiple regression analysis is going to tell us that what is the the model summary, how this individualized these dimensions of transformational leadership could influence Islamic management. In looking at the statistical analysis, we can see from the model summary, the R square tends to tell us that what is the percentage of this the dimensions. We have 0.692. In terms of percentage, we can see we have 69.2% in the R square, which is telling us how do all these dimensions tend to explain the Islamic management. Okay, in terms of ANOVA, perhaps the multiple regression analysis tends to have three different tables, which are, we have the model summary, we have the ANOVA, and also we have the coefficient. All these tables have different interpretation of the results. The first table, which is the model summary, what we are so concerned about, it is the R square, which tells you about the contribution of these dimensions that we have just mentioned. So it is 16 in terms of percentage, we said it is 69.2%. But in terms of the ANOVA, we tend to look at the significance, which is this, the significance, which is 0.00. It tells us that all the four dimensions, they are so significant on Islamic management, on the two dimensions, of course, being research on, which is the forgiveness and also the sincerity. Okay, when we look at here now, it is it is significant in terms of the ANOVA, which we are looking at the significance of the four dimensions. We move on to the next table, which is the coefficient table. The coefficients table actually answered the fifth question, which is which among the best these predictors, which is the idealized consideration, individualized influence, intellectual stimulation, and inspirational motivation. We have seen here in this table here, the result is on the beta table, which is going to look at which one has more contribution. From this table, we look at the beta, we can see 1.115, which is for the idealized influence, okay, which is the significant is not significant. What we look at the inspirational motivation is 0.278, looking at the beta standardized coefficient. We look at the 0.278, looking at is it significant? It's not significant because it is more than 0.005. Okay, this 0.053. Okay, which is more than that, so it's not significant. We look at the intellectual stimulation here under the beta. Also we have 0.421, okay, which is in terms of significance. Here we can see here, right here we have 0.000, which is telling us that it is significant. Okay, in terms of the individualized consideration, we have 0.092. In terms of its significance towards Islamic management, it is not significant, which is 0.378. So looking at the multiple regression analysis, which tends to combine all, of course, when we look at the correlation, even though there is a conflict, or there's no consistency in the correlation and also the multiple regression analysis, the correlation tends to look at the individual relationship with the Islamic management, which tells us that there is a correlation in one way or the other. And in terms of its significance, yes, also this multiple regression analysis tends to look at it is more significant. But if it is being combined together, if all these dimensions being combined together, the most influence, which more predict, of course, all of them, they are predicting in different levels. Like, for example, in the idealized influence, it tends to be 0.115, which in terms of percentage, we say 11.5%. So it goes on like that. So this is how it tends to, predict the Islamic management. But in terms of this, because all this dimension being of transformational leadership is being combined together, it tells us that the most predicting variable, or the most predicting dimension in this dimension is intellectual stimulation, which is quite interesting. Intellectual stimulation, meaning that Islamic, looking at that factor, that it is the intellectual stimulation, which is based on the forgiveness and also the sincerity, which is the dimension of Islamic management. So in conclusion, we can say, okay, I've also explained all this, which is I've just said. So in conclusion here, the study investigated the impact of transformational leadership style, attributes, individualized consideration, idealized influence, intellectual stimulation, and inspirational motivation towards Islamic management at FKP. So these research employed two analyses to understand the current impact of transformational leadership on Islamic management. So here, it tends to tell us that, okay, the most, contributing factor, okay, on Islamic management, it is the intellectual stimulation. So intellectual stimulation actually influences Islamic management. So with this, I have come to the end of my presentation. Thank you for giving me your ears, and also thank you for listening. See you next time.